Let's give him a warm welcome. Welcome, everybody. Rotary International past president Barry Rassin.
Thank you so much, China. I appreciate that kind introduction. But that was perfect. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And what I'm going to share with you today is a recommended outline of how we believe, as the committee Shaping Rotary's Future, believe that we need to change our organization. We all know that change is tough. And I have to tell you, you may not realize this, but the older you get, the harder it is to change. Okay, at your age, change is nothing. You're used to it. But change for somebody who's been doing the same thing for 40 years is a real challenge. So what we're recommending is a real challenge for many Rotarians, but not so much for our Rotaractors and our Interactors. But I do want to share this with you. And it's not something that Rotary has said, yes, this is what we're going to do. This is strictly concept. This is recommendations to the board of Rotary International, and I've been meeting with them about every 2 months. I've already met with the incoming president, Shaker, and he's going to continue developing with us what we're doing. So there's a great hope that we'll go in this direction, but I would suspect that moving forward, it isn't going to be adopted exactly as it is, but the concepts will move forward. So what I want to do is go through some slides with you. And I'm not going to cover all the in-depth of these slides because that would take us an hour, and nobody wants to hear that today. But I want to share the concept, and I want to show you how important it is that we are involving younger individuals in our organization in important positions. So bear with me, and I will begin that process right now. So, as we know, Rotary has been the premier service organization, humanitarian organization for the last 100 years. But if we want to continue that, we believe we must be relevant to today's world. And to be relevant to today's world means we have to be relevant to you as our incoming generation. And so we looked very carefully at that as to what do we need to change in the organization to be relevant to your generation so that you not only enjoy what you're doing in Rotary, but you're excited by it and you know that you're a real part of it to take us into our future. Now, there are things we're not going to change, and that's Rotary's core values. This is who we are. We don't want to change who we are. We don't want to change the amazing outcomes we have around the world because we are changing the world. And that's why when we ask our young professionals, why do you want to be part of Rotary? It's because you want to change the world. We want you to be a part of that. But let's not change who we are. Let's not change what we accomplish. Let's just make it easier and more relevant to you as our Interactors and as our Rotaractors. So, question we asked a lot of Rotarians is, if you were to create Rotary today, how would it be structured? What would it look like if we were to start fresh today? And let's face it, we would all say we want to do something different. This isn't exactly how we want it to be. So the committee looked at it from that perspective. If we were to start today, how would we start our organization? So we want to make meaningful and doable jobs based on members and clubs. Now that means our jobs, the district government today might have 200 clubs. It's almost a full-time job. Only retired people can do that. We've got to get away from that. We want to make sure that these are jobs that you, as young people, young professionals, interact, then Rotaract, and then you're able to have any one of the leadership jobs in Rotary. Right now, that's very difficult, if not impossible, for a young person in the 20s or 30s even to get one of our leadership positions. So that was a part of our talking. We want to make sure that we're effectively and efficiently delivering value to our members. And when I say value to our members and clubs, I'm talking about Rotary, Rotaract, and Interact. I've had some interesting comments from Interactors. How come you've left us out? Believe me, we've never left out Interact. And what you're doing is an example to the Rotary world of what we should be doing. I am so impressed with your organization and how you're doing it, bringing elements of the whole world together to talk about Rotary. That's truly the internationality. And we need to capture what you're doing at the Rotary level. Very important. And of course, we have to support Rotary's strategic initiatives and goals, which in some cases we aren't, for the simple reason we're not getting good enough communication to our clubs, all clubs, Interact, Rotaract, and Rotary. We also want to focus more on our members' experiences. When I show you in some numbers in a moment, you'll see why that's so important, because today we're not doing a good enough job of making sure every member in the organization is enjoying and we're meeting their expectations. We also want to streamline the organization and be more effective with the governance. We believe, and I'll be honest with you, some of our senior leaders think we are wrong, but we believe there's just too many layers in the organization between the Rotary International Board and the club. And therefore, communication to the club isn't as good as it should be. So we want to fix that. And finally, we want to ensure that the structure is flexible and evolves as our members' needs grow. So we need to be ready to change. We need to be ready to adapt. We need to make sure we are relevant as our world changes. And that's very hard for Rotary to do today. So let's make the case for change around the world. When you talk about our membership, we're actually very good at bringing members in, but we're really bad at keeping them. And again, I'm going to show you a number in a moment that's shocking to me. But what we need to do to thrive as an organization is to consider the needs of future generations, not just to today. When you look at the average age of this organization, we're in desperate need of young people getting excited, getting energized, and wanting to be leaders in the Rotary organization. This is our structure as it is today. Now you see it looks a little chaotic. And when you see our structure that we've come up with, it's very different, much cleaner, much more precise, much more easy to get to knowing how you move from a club up. And you'll notice that Rotaract is only barely on this club. It's on this chart. It's really not even part of the organizational structure. And that's already changed. And of course, the next step is to make sure that Interact is of equal status as well. That's going to take a little longer, but we all have patience, right? I say that to young people. I know that you don't have patience. It's well known that the younger generations believe we should make change and believe we should do it now. And in Rotary, that's really hard to do. So we're trying to change the organization so we can make changes faster. Now, when you look at who we are and what we're doing, you look at the numbers. Today, we have 1.174, 890 members of Rotary clubs. Now, see, already I think this is wrong. Not because of the number, but because we're not including how many interactors and how many Rotaractors we have. We should be using a number that includes all of us. And I'm still working on getting our organization to change that philosophy. And I think we'll be able to plug Rotaract in the next year. And then I'm going to have to work with getting Interact plugged in. People around the world need to know how many people are committed to this organization to change our world. And right now, they don't see it through this number. And of course, one of the issues of this number, it hasn't changed a whole lot in 20 years. We've been talking 1.2 million members, and that's just not good enough. We should be about 4 million members, not only who we are at all our clubs, but also the new people who we should be keeping as we go forward. That being said, look at this number. We have lost 1.4 million members of Rotary in the last 10 years. Now, that's just scary to me. To me, that's the biggest challenge we have as an organization. Why are we losing members? Because we're not engaging them. The clubs themselves aren't meeting the expectations of individuals who join our clubs. And we've got to change that. And this all happens in the first 2 or 3 years. They come in, they have an expectation, they want to make the world a better place, and then the club they're in isn't doing what they expected it to do. That's wrong. Now, interestingly enough, when you look at Interact and Rotaract, that is not the case. And I keep using you all as an example to Rotary clubs. Why aren't you doing what Rotaract does? Why aren't you doing what Interact does? They've got it right in a number of different ways. And we need you to be part of our Rotary clubs. So this is one of our dilemmas. Then you look at this chart and you see that although our gender diversity has improved, we're up to 24%, but that's in 30 years. That's just wrong. I'm sorry. And if you go and keep at this pace, we're talking we'll be at gender parity by 2050. That's just wrong. In this day and age, and again, I use the example when I talk to our Rotary clubs, I use Rotaract because I have those statistics. I don't have the statistics for Interact, unfortunately. That's something we need and we need to develop. But with Rotaract, 51% of Rotaract is female. They've already understand it. It's not even a discussion. It's just a natural phenomenon that the young generations understand, and they don't even have to talk about it because it's natural. Whereas Rotary clubs are still talking about it, trying to figure it out. We need to learn from you. I mean, look at your leaders today. Your leaders today are female. And leaders in Rotary should be female. Now, that being said, we now are going to have our first female president of Rotary International. And I think that's going to be a tipping point to help us move faster in this direction. Then you look at our leadership, and you'll see that even in our leadership positions, only 25%, 24% are female. And mostly in the public image coordinators. And you ask yourself, well, why is that? Well, part of what our rules are for public image is that you don't have to be a past district governor. Well, why don't we have that rule for all the positions? That will enable more females to get involved and more young people to get involved. So we want to change that as well. So we need a better balance. But look at that number to the left. Last year, 6% of district governors were under 60. Most of you, that's like 3 times your age. That's just wrong. We need people who you can relate to as your leaders so that you want to continue working with Rotary and continue developing yourselves with leadership skills and moving forward. That has to change. Okay, so then let's look at the model itself. Already you see we put down Rotarians, Rotaractors, and participants. And participants is the general catch-all of everybody else. But the idea is we've already now got Rotaract clubs and Rotary clubs at the same level. Now that took 2 years, but that's okay. We're there and we're moving forward with that. And as I said, Interact's got to come next. So the clubs are still there. Then we want to have leaders for those clubs, but leaders who are only taking care of maybe 10 to 20 clubs, not like a district governor that has, when you put in all the clubs they have, they could have 200 clubs. They can't possibly give them all the attention that they need or want, or don't know they need, but still need. And keep that in mind, because some clubs don't realize that they're really not doing the work of Rotary. They need help. We need somebody who has the time to help. By changing this position and giving no administrative responsibility, only the responsibility to guide and motivate, and only have 10 to 20 clubs, Rotaractors could take those jobs. Whereas right now, only Rotarians can do district governor jobs. So already we're starting to build leadership positions where our young professionals can also become leaders at an earlier age. Then we want to have a regional council. Instead of the zones we have around the world, which is 34 zones defined by the number of Rotary members in the region, in that zone. That's arbitrary. We've got to get away from being arbitrary and being more flexible. So our regions would be defined by culture. by language, by geography. So they have more in common, and then we can leave all local decisions to the regional council. Why should an election dispute go all the way to the board of directors? They don't understand that region well. They might, forgive me for those who, I know you're going to call me a heretic here, but they don't know enough about that region to make those decisions. So they're going by recommendations. Let's let the regions make some of their own decisions. They know what needs to be there. You also see the secretariat obviously still there. We want to create a global cadre, which is not the cadre today, which is just foundation stewardship, but this is a group of experts in every aspect of Rotary. So membership, public image, foundation, whatever it is, and certified as experts. So clubs who need help can ask individuals in that area closer to their region to help them to develop. And of course, we haven't changed our boards of directors because we were asked not to, because we might mess with them too. But we've been asked to stay away from that, so we have. But by changing all the rest, they have to change. What happens is automatically now the Rotary International Board of Directors will be able to look more at the global level, more at the strategic thinking and less at the regions, which gives us a much better opportunity for strategic planning. So at the global level, you can see what we want in the cadre is all of these specific expertise. So individuals, and not because they're past district governors, but because they're experts in any one or more of these areas. Really important. At the regional level, we want a board that is elected by the clubs, so the individual members have an opportunity to participate in who their leaders are. The regional board will have 12 members, they'll be elected, but they will represent different skills. So one might be finance, another might be public image, another might be foundation. So they have the whole spectrum of Rotary. So they're governing, and they take on the administrative responsibility for what the district governor used to do, all goes to this board administratively. Motivationally, all to that section leader we saw earlier. So, and we're talking maybe 45 or 50 regions around the world. And what we want to do is have individuals in the world make the decision as what's the best region for them. For instance, do we put France and Martinique and different islands who speak French together, or do we leave it geographically with that language? Those are the decisions we next have to look at. But we have to look at it with guidance from those who are local. We don't want to be telling anybody what to do. Then at the section level, this is where, to me, the heart of what we're trying to accomplish. We want more ability to communicate with clubs. We want more ability for younger people to take on that role of communicating with clubs. Let's face it, young people can deal with change better. So as we change and are flexible, that our young people are involved, we have a much greater opportunity to adapt to today's world as the world changes. And we need to be able to do that. By the way, the jobs for both the regional board and for the section leader are longer terms. They're not just the 1 year and everybody leaves and we start over again. We want more continuity. We want more ability to think strategically and longer range. So the board will be 3-year terms, the section leaders 2 years, including their elect year. So more involvement and more time to accomplish what they need to accomplish. So that's a real quick overview of the new plan. As you could see, a lot of thought has gone into not only changing the structure, but enabling the structure to encapsulate our young professionals. So there's more opportunity for young people to become leaders and to become influential in what we're doing. And I think that really takes us into where we need to go to the future. I'm excited by it. This is not easy. We're going to start with a pilot program. Actually, we want to do 3 pilot programs, but right now we have one ready to go in Australia, New Zealand, Pacific Islands. one region, all the districts come together and they're going to create a board. In order to do this, and I know one question is, how long is this going to take? It's going to take a long time. Okay, it could take 10 years to get where we want to be. But we've got to do this carefully because it is such major change. And for Australia, New Zealand, Pacific Islands, as an example, I'm going to meet with them 2 nights a week for the next 6 weeks in order to talk to every district, every leader, every person who wants to listen so that they can understand what we want to accomplish. So they're a part. We all know that the more you're involved in decisions, the more you accept the decisions. And that's really important. So that's where we are. That's where we're headed. The young professionals, Rotaract have got to be ready to move toward this because we know you are our leaders of the future. We know that one of you in this room is going to be president of Rotary International one day. To get there, that means we've got to make sure we keep an organization that you want to join a Rotary Club when your time is there, and that you want to be a leader in the organization to help take us there. So I think you guys are a step ahead of interactors I've seen in most places, and I admire that. I congratulate you, and I really thank you for including me in this discussion today. Thank you.
If there's a way that over 1 million Rotarians that left their Rotary Club can go back?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the first thing we have to do is fix our Rotary clubs so that people want to be a part of every Rotary club. We have some really fantastic clubs and we have some really weak clubs, and we need to fix the weak clubs. Then we need to put a list together of that 1.4 million who left and call them one by one and say, look, we've improved. We're better than we were. We want you to come back. And we need then to be ready to be relevant to them so that they can come back. And part of that relevance is not only to those who've left, but those who haven't joined yet and don't realize that we're not really who we say we are all the time in every club. And that includes, I talk specifically to Rotaractors because they're ready to move into Rotary, and yet less than 4% of Rotaractors join Rotary clubs. So, and they look at a Rotary club and we're not relevant. We've got to fix our Rotary clubs. And that's why this model is so important, so that we have a greater ability to fix Rotary clubs that aren't meeting the expectations of their members. I hope that answered your question.
I was wondering if you could speak to some major changes you've seen from when you first joined Rotary to now.
That's an interesting question. Why is it always the young people ask me the hardest questions? It's amazing. But I think the biggest change I've seen, honestly, in the 40 years I've been in Rotary, actually it's 41 now, and none of you are even my age, at that age yet. But in the 41 years in Rotary, I think what we've done in the last 2 years in Rotaract is the fastest change we've made. But we've made a lot of changes along the way. They're just not quite, I don't think, as big as the Rotaract change, so that we better recognize our young members. But think about, we used to have attendance requirements that were really stringent. I mean, I used to have to maintain 100% for my club. I know somebody who was on another island in my country, left their family on the island, drove his boat back to this island, broke down in the harbor, swam to shore, climbed a fence in order to go to a club to get his makeup, so he didn't lose 100%. That's insane, absolutely insane. But that's what we used to do to maintain attendance. Attendance at a club, really that important? We should be there, don't get me wrong. Again, I know I sound like a heretic sometimes. We should be there as much as we can. But what's more important, doing the service of the club. I would rather a requirement that we're at every service function that we provide. So we're out there in the community. That should be a major important part of what we do. So that was another change. And there's been other changes along the way. But again, we have a council on legislation. They can only meet every 3 years right now. So those major changes can only happen 4 years out because you need to get your requested change in a year ahead. So we can't change our organization in any major way for 4 years. That's just wrong in this day and age. Things happen overnight. Look with this pandemic. And we couldn't do anything except try to make the changes we could. And we've done well, don't get me wrong. We've adapted to the pandemic. I think that it's actually been a very good thing for Rotary. While we've lost members, we've learned how to catch up with you at a digital level. Because you, look at this, you're running the Zoom meeting in an extraordinary way. I've been to a lot of Rotary clubs that aren't running it this well, are not this organized, but you know how to do that. And that's why I need you in Rotary, so you can help us to get to that point. So this is good for us. This is going to help us change and adapt to today's world and move forward for the future. So that's just a couple of things that have changed over time.
And for our very last question, President Barry, what advice would you give to those of us who are starting their Rotary journey, whether they would be starting still in Interact, Rotaract, or Rotary? What would you give them as advice?
You know, and I'm glad you said journey, because when I talk about this, I do talk about the journey. And we have early act clubs now, and Interact and Rotaract. And at each level, our Rotary sponsors should be constantly reminding you that this is a journey, that this isn't just joining a club to help your school or help your community. This is a journey to make our world a better place. And once you've started and you've learned, you need to stay on that journey. So when you leave your school, first thing you do in your next location is look for a Rotary connection. If you're leaving Interact, you're looking for a Rotaract connection. If you're leaving Rotaract, you're looking for maybe a community-based Rotaract connection. You're leaving Rotaract, and that's the tricky one, because they're the ones normally who are ready to move to a Rotary club. And that's where Rotary clubs have to be ready to change. But saying that, I know when young people look at many Rotary clubs, you know, and I'll give you my example. When I was first asked to join a Rotary club, I said, no, sorry. I was 29 years old and everybody in that club was over 70. That's wrong, okay? But I couldn't relate. We need to be able to relate to the groups that we're part of. So my challenge to young people, when you look at a Rotary club and it's not right, you have a choice. Number one, you join that club anyway, and you start to bring your friends in, and you slowly change the club and make it more effective as a Rotary club in a nice way, not insulting anybody, not making them feel bad, but working with them to develop their club. That takes courage, not always easy. I know in many cultures, especially a young person trying to tell senior people at that level how to change is a real challenge. It's just not culturally acceptable. However, we still should try it. If you're nice to me, if you're nice to people and you're respectful, you can change anything. So I believe you could do that. On the other hand, if that isn't right for you as an individual, start another Rotary club right there next door. Okay? There's nothing wrong with that. You can do that. And that way you now create a Rotary club for younger people. And that's what we need in our organization. You saw the number before, 6% of district governors under 60 years old. That's just wrong. And again, I'm over 60. Okay, I'm way over 60. I have a respect for people my age. Don't get me wrong. We can do a lot of good things. We got experience, but we need to share it. We need to mentor our young professionals, and we need to help you get those leadership positions. So that helps you to develop as an individual. It helps you in your career. I've learned more about leadership from Rotary than I ever learned from my master's degree or my work. And I've taken that to my work to help me work with employees along the way. And I know I'm starting to ramble here because I just feel very passionate that Rotary clubs need to think differently, and we need your help to do that. So have the courage to reach out to whatever your next level is, from Interact to Rotaract to community-based to Rotary, and help them to learn from your passion and your creativity and your lack of patience, and learn from them for their experience and all the mistakes they've made. Heck, if I could tell you all the mistakes I've made over my lifetime, you could learn a whole lot of what not to do. And that's good for you. So it's a real close relationship between Rotary and Rotaract that we need to do better with. So I hope I answered that question. It wasn't short.
Barry has shared with us his vision on the future and has empowered us to take action and build Rotary's future together.